Have you watched the movie Agora? This movie is based the story, Zoef Hypatia, a remarkable woman who lived in Alexandria, Egypt. She was born around 355 CE. Alexandria was a great center of learning at that time. It had a famous library and many scholars. Hypatia grew up surrounded by knowledge and books. Her father was Theon, a well-known mathematician. He taught Hypatia from a young age. She learned math, astronomy, and philosophy. Hypatia was very smart and curious. She wanted to learn everything she could. As Hypatia grew older, she became famous for her knowledge. People came from far away to learn from her. She was one of the few women allowed to teach men. This was unusual in ancient times. Hypatia did not let gender stop her from pursuing wisdom. Hypatia lived during a time of change. The Roman Empire was becoming Christian, but Alexandria still had many pagans. Hypatia was pagan, but she taught both pagans and Christians. She believed in seeking truth through reason and science. Hypatia was a follower of Neoplatonism. This was a school of thought based on Plato's ideas. Neoplatonists believed in one supreme being. They thought the human soul could reach this being through knowledge. Hypatia taught these ideas to her students. She added her own thoughts to Neoplatonism. Hypatia focused on mathematics and logic. She believed these could help understand the universe. She taught that reason was the path to truth. This was different from religious faith alone. Hypatia's philosophy was about balance. She taught that the mind and body were both important. She encouraged her students to take care of their physical health. She also taught them to train their minds. This holistic approach was ahead of its time. Her teachings influenced many people. Some of her students became important leaders. They spread her ideas to other parts of the empire. Hypatia's philosophy helped shape the thinking of her time. It also influenced later thinkers in Europe and the Middle East. Hypatia made important contributions to astronomy. She studied the movements of planets and stars. She helped improve the astrolabe. This was a tool used to measure the positions of stars. Her work made it easier for sailors to navigate by the stars. In mathematics, Hypatia worked on complex problems. She studied conic sections. These are shapes made by cutting a cone. Her work helped later mathematicians understand these shapes better. She also wrote about algebra and geometry. Hypatia's work in astronomy was practical. She made tables showing the movements of heavenly bodies. These tables were used for many years after her death. They helped people predict eclipses and the positions of planets. This was important for both science and religion in ancient times. Her mathematical work was more theoretical. She tried to solve problems that had puzzled earlier mathematicians. Some of her solutions were lost over time. But we know she made progress in areas that stumped others. Her work laid the groundwork for later discoveries. Hypatia wrote several books, but most are lost today. We know about them from other writers. One book was about Diophantus' arithmetic. This was an important work on algebra. Hypatia's commentary helped others understand it better. She also wrote about Apollonius' conics. This book was about shapes made by cutting cones. Hypatia's work made these ideas clearer. She may have written about Ptolemy's astronomy too, but we're not sure if this book survived. Hypatia invented or improved several scientific tools. She worked on the astrolabe, making it more accurate. She might have invented a hydrometer. This measures the density of liquids. These tools were important for science and trade. Her inventions show that Hypatia was practical as well as theoretical. She wanted her knowledge to be useful. She taught her students how to make and use these tools. This hands-on approach made her a great teacher. Section 5. A respected teacher and political advisor. Hypatia was a famous teacher in Alexandria. People came from all over to learn from her. She taught at the Neoplatonic school. Her classes covered philosophy, mathematics, and astronomy. She had both pagan and Christian students. Her teaching style was unique. She used examples from everyday life. This made complex ideas easier to understand. She encouraged her students to think for themselves. She didn't want them to just accept what they were told. Many of Hypatia's students became important people. Some were government officials, others were church leaders. They respected her wisdom and advice. Even after they left school, they often wrote to her for guidance. Hypatia also advised the city's leaders. The Roman prefect Orestes was her friend. He often asked for her opinion on political matters. This made her influential in Alexandria, but it also made some people jealous and afraid of her power. Section 6. Religious tensions in Alexandria. Alexandria was a city divided in Hypatia's time. There were pagans, Jews, and Christians. The Christians were becoming more powerful. Some wanted to get rid of other religions. This caused tension in the city. Hypatia tried to stay neutral in these conflicts. She had friends and students from all groups. She taught that wisdom was more important than religious differences. But not everyone agreed with her open-minded approach. The Christian bishop of Alexandria was Cyril. He wanted more power for the church. He didn't like that Hypatia was friends with Orestes. Orestes was trying to keep peace between different groups. Cyril saw this as a threat to his authority. Some Christians thought Hypatia's teachings were against their faith. They didn't like her influence over important people. They spread rumors that she was a witch. This made the situation in Alexandria even more dangerous. Section 7. The tragic death of a scholar. In March 415 CE, something terrible happened. A group of Christian fanatics attacked Hypatia. They dragged her from her chariot in the street. They took her to a church called the Caesareum. There, they brutally murdered her. They stripped her clothes and beat her with roof tiles. Then they tore her body apart. It was a shocking and violent end for a peaceful scholar. The murder of Hypatia shocked many people. Even some Christians were horrified by it. Orestes complained to the emperor about the violence. But Cyril had powerful friends in the imperial court. Nothing was done to punish the killers. Hypatia's death marked the end of an era in Alexandria. It showed that religious intolerance was growing stronger. Many scholars left the city after her murder. The great tradition of learning in Alexandria began to decline. Section 8. Hypatia's legacy through the ages. After her death, Hypatia became a symbol. Different groups used her story for their own purposes. In the Enlightenment, she was seen as a martyr for science. People wrote plays and poems about her. They saw her as a victim of religious fanaticism. In the 19th century, Hypatia became important for women's rights. She showed that women could be great thinkers too. Her story inspired many women to pursue education. She became a role model for women in science and philosophy. Some people exaggerated Hypatia's story. They made her more beautiful or more perfect than she really was. This made it hard to know the true Hypatia. Historians had to work hard to separate fact from fiction. Today, Hypatia is still remembered and studied. There are books, movies, and even planetariums named after her. She represents the search for knowledge and the fight against intolerance. Her story continues to inspire people around the world. Section 9. The enduring impact of Hypatia. Hypatia's life and death teach us important lessons. She showed that knowledge is powerful. She proved that women could be great thinkers and leaders. Her tragic end reminds us of the dangers of intolerance and fanaticism. In science, Hypatia's work laid foundations for future discoveries. Her commentaries on ancient texts helped preserve knowledge. Her improvements to scientific instruments were used for centuries. Even though many of her writings are lost, her influence lives on. Hypatia's approach to education is still relevant today. She taught people to think critically and ask questions. She showed that different subjects are connected. Her holistic view of learning is something modern educators still value. In the end, Hypatia's greatest legacy is her love of wisdom. She dedicated her life to seeking truth through reason. She taught others to do the same. Her courage in standing up for her beliefs, even in dangerous times, continues to inspire us. Hypatia remains a symbol of the power of knowledge and the importance of free thought.